What's up, players? Welcome to episode 6 of Sesh. Basically, once a month, I choose a topic to talk about. And this month, I really want to talk about how I would fix DBD. Of course, this is just subjective. So if you don't agree with what I'm saying, you can disagree in the comments, or you can just accept that it's my opinion. Everybody's different. Hi, Jupiter. Oh. Um, so first off, I want to split this video into two parts. I think overarching changes that behavior should make to the game that I think would significantly improve the quality of the game and just everyday play. And then also killer reworks / buffs and changes. To start, I think the game definitely needs to go to a 3-chapter-a-year system rather than the 4 that we're currently on. I think giving them that extra half month on average to work on a chapter would be much better, especially mid chapters as well. And 2 perks per new character. 3 perks is just getting to be way too much. I mean, with The Walking Dead, you basically have 1 or 2 perks that are like actually memorable from both Michonne and Rick. Yeah, Rick. And they just release perks that are like way too situational and are just useless or like should have been upgrades to existing perks. Tell me the last time they released a perk that was actually in your build, right? An actually useful perk that you don't have to commit your entire build to getting value out of. I would say either Unforeseen or Friends Till the End. A tracking perk or just Trail of Torment, a little bit different. It just feels like they're making perks to keep up with the tradition of 3 perks per new character, especially because they released 2 new survivors, changed like I think 5 perks on each side. It feels like we didn't really have any new perks to play around with this mid chapter, and especially because I'm not a huge fan of The Walking Dead. Getting those perks is I don't really care for them. And so next up, we do need to remove haste and hindered stacking. It was really funny watching everybody complain about that back in the Kaneki mid chapter, and they're like, no, I need to get 119% haste against like a 110 killer. Oh, and then like now that they see how Clown can get up to 150% movement speed pretty easily, now people want to start complaining about it. I understand Survivor players in this community is not a monolith, but I think people don't really realize just how bad the game is right now, especially because you can stack haste and hindered perks. I think the perks are more the problem. Stacking effects, if you want like, which play with your food on Houndmaster doesn't really work, but if you wanted to stack like 3 stacks of play with your food and then search command on Houndmaster, I don't really care, but like I can go into further detail about buffing and nerfing a lot of, if not all of, the haste perks in the game. I think hindered perks are primarily just weak, to be honest. Like knockout is noticeable, but it's not as strong as I think it should be. Just because there really isn't anything to counter hold W besides playing a different killer. So, Wesker, really any killer that can't, like, it's just, I feel like knockout could be better. But yeah, like I said, I can go into further detail about buffing and nerfing haste and hindered perks in a later video if you guys want that. They need to revert hook timers back to 60 seconds. That extra 10 seconds is actually kind of like making DBD really hard to play against people that know what they're doing. Especially because reassurance exists in the game, and I'll get to that later. But that extra 10 seconds enables like way too many mistakes from survivors, and they can commit to gens for literally 0 downside. That extra 10 seconds is the difference between finishing a gen and unhooking a survivor, and now they can just do both of those. This next part is something that I've been noticing a lot, and I don't know about you guys. But most of the time, I'll be chasing 3 survivors the entire game, and there's gonna be one that I didn't find at all that just pounded out gens. Didn't even save their teammates, really. Just did gens, never hooked them, probably didn't even injure them. And then I get them endgame, and because they're a total bot that just sat on gens, they suck at chasing, of course. And so then I get first hook, endgame, and you have basically 2.5 minutes to do fuck all. And it's like I'm just sitting there waiting for the survivors to do something. I don't want to go into like power roll shit, but it really does feel like you're not the power roll at that point. Even though, maybe I have one dead, one survivor injured. I've got this rat that just did nothing the entire game but gens, and then they're on first hook. So what I'm saying is that if exit gates are powered or you're in endgame collapse, they should just have base kit monster shrine timer decay. So, their first hook would be 48 seconds with the reverted hook timers. Just having a little bit faster decay on their hook is such a nice thing, especially because I feel like even though endgame collapse is only like 3-4-ish minutes, I feel like it just drags out simply because the survivors don't want to do anything yet, and it's not even like they get in position half the time. They're just standing around waiting for you to do something instead of doing something themselves. Next up, as I said, I think reassurance should get a rework. I'm all for adding an extra meter to the range, which would basically guarantee being able to use it on any basement. I think basement should really just be removed from the game, to be honest. But that's not, I don't think that's an actual issue with DBD. It's more just a quality of life thing. But make the timer of reassurance based on hook progress. I think starting out at 4 seconds per hook is a pretty fair deal. Technically, this would make it stronger in endgame. But early game, it's not. I feel like early game, if a survivor wants to reassure someone on a hook, they get an extra 30 seconds right now. Let's say, you got 2 or 3 hooks at 3 gens, and you really need to commit to a second stage because let's say you have like a gen at 70%. That's very, very close to the hook. You have to defend that gen while also securing second. Survivor just can come by, hit reassurance, stop the gen from regressing, and then fuck off. And you have so much time to either save the survivor that's about to hit second, or finish other gens. And it just like getting consistent value throughout the game on a perk that is supposed to give survivors more time. It feels like early game, this perk is way too strong, while late game, it has the exact same value. And I do think, before I go on to killer perk reworks, I do think the gen kick limit should stay at 8. Maybe we can buff it up to 9 or 10. But I do think eruption and a whole slew of gen kick perks besides Pop Goes the Weasel should get reworked and buffed. I think reverting eruption back to its strongest form, but adding like a 1.5 or 2 second delay before the perk detonates would be honestly really good. I know behavior is very resourceful, so you could even reuse the Dream Palette animation that Freddy has, just something, because if a survivor wants to commit to a generator and they're willing to take the incapacitated, like let's say it's at like 2%, right? Or 2% left, and they get incapacitated for 30 seconds. I feel like that's a fair trade-off, if they're like adding a delay to eruption, sure, might make it useless, but I think that trade-off of there's a warning before you get incapacitated could make the perk a little bit better. Right now, just getting aura reading on somebody that would likely commit to the gen anyways, not that great. But moving on, I do think pain res should have been buffed last summer. I don't know why they ever nerfed it. It really incentivizes anti-tunneling, and I'll get into my thoughts about tunneling and how I would fix it. But a lot of people have suggested that you just make pain res deactivate on first death, and with my changes to tunneling, I don't think people will actually be tunneled out of the game. So that isn't really in my mindset. But honestly, 30% just flat, 30% regression per first scourge, and a loud noise notification if survivors scream. So that way, even right now, you're not going to you're going to pull off the gen before a survivor gets hooked to not tell the killer, hey, this actually hit somebody or this painter has actually hit a gen that somebody's working on. Next up, I wanted to rework whispers. I think just adding some kind of token system per survivor alive to lower the range that whispers activates could be pretty good. It's the exact same perk when 4 survivors are alive, but it becomes more accurate later into the game, which I think is pretty fair, to be honest. Even at 2 survivors left, 16 meters, 16 meter radius is still fairly large, and especially if you're on multiple floor maps, it could be a little bit better, considering that it used to be like the only tracking perk we had in the game, and now there's just hundreds. Next up, something that I think shouldn't be too controversial. I think they should just make agitation speed base kit. I don't know about the tear radius thing. I don't know what you would rework it into, but I feel like so many people are asking for remote hooks, and especially with Jagged Compass coming out and Forever Entwined, which should have been an agitation rework, as I said at the start of the video, perks that should have been reworks into existing perks. Just making killers 107 while carrying a body not only allows you to get 2 scourge hooks without having to either full commit into a scourge hook build, or just getting to a hook faster in general could be really nice. I feel like agitation is one of those perks that you either use on Trapper or it feels nice. I don't know. But really, I feel like Agi is just not as good as it used to be, especially with how many different alternatives there are. Making this base kit could help to the feeling that killer is getting harder. Something else, I think you can make Corrupt Intervention either 30 or 60 seconds base kit, and then the perk just doubles whatever base kit is. I think Corrupt Intervention right now at 2 minutes is a little bit too strong. Even with the deactivation factor on your first down, on killers like Kaneki, you can injure everybody within like 90 seconds and still have 30 seconds left over to block 3 generators, especially with how much movement that killer has. I don't think it's a killer specific issue, but honestly, Corrupt Intervention is way too strong of a perk right now to not be running if you are serious about playing DBD. But also, I think it could use a little bit of a nerf if they are going to make it base kit. Something that I think will probably be the most controversial take of this video is that every single healing speed, anything that affects healing speed in the game, needs to be cut in half. Whether it be a timer, or a speed, or a negative speed, technically. Anything that affects healing should be reduced in some way, shape, or form. Combining leverage and Gift of Pain takes longer than a Thrill of the Hunt totem. To heal off hook with leverage Gift of Pain takes so fucking long. We just need to gut every healing perk, even medkits, I think too. Healing meta on Survivor right now is way too strong, and I think there are definitely fair counters. But when you aren't running a full healing build, or you don't have a teammate running Will Make It, running into leverage Gift of Pain is so gross that I think the game just needs a full reset on anti and healing perks in general. Next up, just revert the Franklin's nerf. I really don't know why they ever went through with this. The only two explanations I can think of is that they didn't want to rewrite any code, especially because this perk has been majorly untouched with how it regresses items for the last like 9 8 9 years. So maybe the base code to the perk is so fucking bad that they don't know how to change it so that it affects maps and keys, whatever else they changed with this last mid chapter on the items specifically. But yeah, this really only affects M1 killers or killers that can't down fast, because Franklin's was really the only way you could counter medkits as like Onryo or Trickster, and now they're just they're still insane. But like I said before, we need to giga buff every direct gen kick perk except for Pop Goes the Weasel. I think Pop Goes the Weasel is probably the most balanced perk in this game right now. And maybe we could give it a slight buff, but Pop Goes the Weasel is in a perfect spot right now, and I think even like Overcharge kind of needs a buff, because Overcharge against good survivors just doesn't really do anything. Pop and Oppression are two of the most balanced perks in the game right now, and I think we need to model every gen kick perk around those two. And lastly, but certainly not least, the anti-tunneling problem that I think would just be super simple to fix. 45 seconds of no collision off hook, or until you do a conspicuous action during that time. And OTR would just add another 45 seconds. I think there are way too many anti-tunneling perks on the survivor side, whether it be you getting unhooked or the person unhooking. I think Shoulder the Burden, while it is really strong, is fine as is. But just, it's so simple to fix, and yet behavior is doing everything in their power to do the most complex solving of this problem. But yeah, those are all of the changes I would make to the base game. Now I want to talk about killer reworks. First off, I want to go over the Walking Dead changes. Really, I just want to talk about Pig and Clown, as I think they are two of probably the most outdated powers in the game right now. And these are with the idea that haste and hindered stacking would be removed from the game. So with Pig, I think they just buffed her dash to 7.1. Just make it a flat 7. And her crouch movement speed at 4.4. It really doesn't make sense to me why they are so cautious to make Pig faster than survivors while she's crouched. That's how she gets around the map while being stealthy. Even Ghostface, which has a pretty similar model, his crouch speed, I can't remember what it's at right now, but like her entire anti-loop power is forced into her crouch, so making it so that she doesn't lose as much distance while crouched around the map just makes more sense. And I think her slowdown is so RNG dependent that I would like to make it more consistent. I would personally make each trap take 2 searches every time, so it's a guaranteed 2 boxes to get your trap off, and you can definitely lower the timer, maybe to 1.5 or 2 minutes. But I think you could make it 5 or 6 traps total, and that the trap would activate 30 seconds after unhooking rather than the gen completion. Having a trap activate on gen completion really is just harmful to newer players that might not know that this exists, or might not be in the know that, like, hey, an injured survivor with a deactivated trap is trying to get healed. I shouldn't do this gen, I should wait. And that's the thing, is that also with Pig, running Oppression or Rune to automatically regress 99 gens, especially because that is a very common strategy while playing against Pig. You often will find 99 gens while they're waiting for a survivor to either get healed or take the trap off before it activates, just as a reassurance that your teammate will stay alive. After a box is searched, I want Pig to receive 2 buffs. Her next dash is 9 meters per second and takes a quarter of a second longer to stand up, so that there is an element of surprise rather than just playing a 50-50. And you can hold up to 2 of these Giga Dashes. And I want her to have Killer Instinct on survivors within 12 meters of her. The second buff only lasts for 30 seconds and will not refill if a box is searched during the active time. So as the game goes on, your chase power becomes more threatening, it's easier to find people, and the boxes are no longer RNG based. So let's say when you really need somebody to keep a trap on for more than like a minute, and they're the one that has a one search trap, it can be really frustrating. Taking out that RNG element from a killer that doesn't really have a good map presence herself or a good chase ability can, I think, make her less frustrating to play. Now into Clone, I think they need to turn his yellow bottles into like a one-time buff. You can make like a drinking animation, whatever. Just make it a 10-second buff that gives him 10% haste, and it goes on an 8-second cooldown after those 10 seconds. But during that 10 seconds, he leaves behind a trail of 7% haste that lingers for another 10 seconds, or you can make it 8, whatever. So effectively, he gets 10% haste during this time, and if he walks back through the trail that he leaves, he gets 17% haste, just like he does right now, which incentivizes his anti-loop ability, but does not make him an oppressive catch-up chase. I think making his purple bottles down to 12% hindered could be okay, and you get 3 bottles per use of your antidote ability, which is basically 1 purple bottle every 6 seconds, and they auto reload, so no more wasting time reloading, which I really don't understand why he would reload anyways. Their bottles, they crack, or like he throws them at the ground and they're supposed to explode. That never really made sense to me. But like I said, you still get some haste, and it entices you to double back through the antidote you spread, which is a, I guess, more active way to give him an anti-loop ability, but also he's less oppressive catching back up to you. Now with Ghostface, he's a very outdated power, and I have a straightforward buff to his kit, and then a rework that I think would take a lot of manpower to make, and it would be kind of like a twins sort of, and it would be a little bit more lore accurate to the newer movies. Well, I guess I really haven't seen a lot of Scream movies, but essentially, first off, the just buffs to his power right now, the 10% haste that he got in 2v8, I think you would apply that, and I really did like that. Playing Ghostface in 2v8 was pretty nice. I forget which add-on it's called, but whiffing doesn't remove power if you are shrouded. If you were to miss an M1 while you are shrouded, it would pull you out of your power, and you would basically lose all of your mind gaming ability on a marked survivor. Let's say you're at like a jungle gym, and the survivor greets the pallet, you swing through it. Now your red light is showing, and if you're at a long wall, you kind of need your red light to be gone, especially if it's a 115 killer with no movement ability. I really don't see why this is a thing, especially because this is just like a yellow add-on, or green technically. And then also, downing a marked survivor gives 15 seconds of unbreakable power. Essentially, if you down a marked survivor, it takes you out of Shroud right now. And so I think leaving him in Shroud, where he cannot be broken out, could be really nice in allowing him to snowball, which is kind of what Ghostface needs. He doesn't have a movement ability. And now for the full rework that I want to suggest, give him a copy. And so kind of like working like with twins, where you can swap between 2 different ghost faces, and you would probably give the other one some kind of ability rather than just 2 stalking. Like, you know, you control 2 ends of the map. I think just giving Ghostface the map control, like with twins, could be really nice. or like Scopos from Siege, if you're still playing that dog shit game, where you basically have two robots that you can control. Just something to give Ghostface a little bit of map mobility, which he desperately needs if we're not going to rework his stalking. And next, a Chucky rework, because I think a 110 third-person killer that is basically unseeable isn't really fun to play against, and I don't think his dash is really all that much of an issue. The hitbox is pretty bad, but I think that's more about a third-person killer than anything. So next, when Chucky is not in hidey ho, I want him in first person. They already have this when you're carrying around a body. And if anything, this could just give behavior more skins to put out. So who knows? Like, they already have the transition and FBS or FOV slider in the game. So they could technically just make Chucky first person when he's not in power. When you're in power, you go into third person. And I think you could make regular first person Chucky 115 and just giga buff his dash. The problem is that they added a third person killer to DBD, and that's his entire power. With Dracula, at least that's not his entire thing. He has other things, and the dog can't really mind game. I think that's the main issue, is that the dog, you can't move backwards, so it's very telltale what the dog is doing, even though you can't really see him. And so just making Chucky less frustrating to play against because he's third person could be really nice. I think you could revert the speed and speed ramp changes to dash, but keep the duration, considering this is Chucky's map mobility. Having that longer dash really allows you to do a lot of cool shit. And I think a 14-second recharge and maybe adding 2 or 3 seconds to Hidey Ho's duration could be in order. I feel like Hidey Ho doesn't last that long unless you are using the iridescent add-on, which is pretty good, but I feel like popping Hidey Ho just to be undetectable is not really that effective anymore, considering people have just gotten used to playing against Chucky. Now, for Myers, I want to add a teleportability, something that would feel a little bit more lore accurate. After reaching tier 3, you can choose to teleport 16 meters behind your most stalked survivor that is not hooked or in the dying state. And this is very similar to a pinhead box TP, where it would effectively, you press the button and then it would triangulate on the survivor. It would give a sound cue to every player in the game, telling them that Myers is on the run and to look out behind you. I feel like this is very fitting considering how many times in the original movie, and by the way, I'm a huge fan. I love Halloween, the 78 version. But I feel like just having Myers randomly appear behind you, especially because he is a stalking killer, could be pretty cool, and it would give Myers a little bit more map control that he clearly needs. Let me know what you think. How would you fix DBD? I know it is not in the best state, but really I think that is part of the bugs that are happening and really just issues with how the developers are handling communicating with the community. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.